Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Rage 2. I played it on the Xbox One. It's also available on the PS4 and Steam. So we'll start with the story, which you play as either a guy or a girl named Walker, and you are in an area called Vineland. Vineland seems to be like some kind of military fort in the wasteland, and this is all after the events of Rage 1. Everything seems to be relatively okay until the Authority shows up. Thankfully, Rage 2 does not take itself quite as seriously as Rage 1 did, because having a villain named the Authority in a game that takes itself overly seriously just didn't work. But the Authority comes down and destroys Vineland, not entirely but mostly, and you are basically on a quest to take down the Authority, avenge your mentor, free society from these people. One thing I thought was interesting was in the first game, the Authority was very much like human, and in this game they are much more mutant, and they use mutants to their advantage rather than being a human military. So as for the audio, I will say I liked the voiceover work in this game. I think they did a good job. I think they did a great job really capturing the tone of what was going on in the game. Each voice actor did a really good job with their individual characters. The sound effects were very good in this game. I liked the guns, I liked the mutants, I liked the raiders. I think they did a good job with all the different sound effects to build the world. That being said, there is music in the game, but it is utterly forgettable. You don't really notice when it's not there, and you don't really notice when it's there. It works well enough when it is there, but you're not gonna remember the soundtrack, and at no point in time are you gonna be like, oh man, I need to own this soundtrack. So as for gameplay, it's an open world first-person shooter with some RPG elements, actually a good amount of RPG elements. And they did a good job with the open world. It's big enough that you actually need vehicles to get around, and they give you a good reason to use the vehicles to get around, and you use the vehicles well in the game for even combat. There's also a decent variety of weapons and vehicles, but the thing is, you don't really need that variety. While I was playing through, I pretty much only ever used the shotgun and assault rifle. I would occasionally switch up and use other weapons just because I was low on ammo, but I very rarely needed other weapons. The assault rifle in this game is so powerful that you really don't need a lot of the other guns, and the shotgun is great for the close range mutants. I'm not really complaining that the assault rifle is overpowered because I personally love using assault rifles in games, but I just gotta say, it was kind of weird that there wasn't a great variety in enemies that required me to use all the different weapons that I got. Vehicles also follow a similar pattern. Apart from doing the races, you need a race vehicle for that, but for anything else, really the Phoenix vehicle is the only thing you need. Out of the vehicles, it has the widest array of weapons. It's also the only vehicle you can actually upgrade, so it just kind of renders all the other vehicles pointless. It was just kind of a weird and honestly poor design if they have all these vehicles and guns that you don't really need. Like any open world game, you have your main missions and then you have all your side missions and activities and all that jazz. And I feel like Rage 2 does a good job of giving you enough of the side missions and enough of that other stuff to give you enough to do, but not feel overwhelming. But I will say the main story itself is actually very short. I was kind of unimpressed with the length of it. Also, I just wanted to kind of throw in there that the world still doesn't feel alive, I want to say. Not necessarily the entire world, but the towns don't really feel alive. And that's because the NPCs are really just standing around. A lot of them don't really ever move anywhere. They will move when you appear. They're basically set dressing. I feel in games like this, you feel more in the world when the NPCs are actually doing stuff rather than just standing around waiting for you to talk to them. And I don't just mean like the quest giver NPCs, I mean every NPC in this game feels like set dressing. I'm gonna go into a few other problems I had with this game. Like, there's a day and night cycle, and in that night cycle there are some areas that are so dark that you really could benefit from a flashlight that doesn't exist. And then the two more major issues, one more of an encumbrance than anything, was I would go into a mission and then when I was finish that mission, I'd leave that area, my vehicle would just disappear. I'd drive there, I'd park in front of it, I'd come out, and my vehicle would be gone, and while it didn't ruin the game, it did get really frustrating. And then the most frustrating and kind of ruinous problem that I ran into was this game froze at least 3 times on me. It also did a soft crash a few times, and then it did a hard crash like 3 or 4 times. The sheer number of freezes and crashes that occurred was just unacceptable. Next up, the controls. For the most part, the controls worked very, very well. They were responsive and precise. I never had a problem shooting. I didn't have a problem, generally speaking, with the special abilities. Most of the special abilities worked very well. The only one I had problems with was the dash function. That just didn't work great. I just had problems dashing at times, and that got frustrating, but again, not something that really took away from the overall experience. The only other problem I would say I had with the controls was the melee. Not that it didn't melee when I wanted it to, but it didn't always hit. I would be trying to smash open boxes and that almost never worked. Sometimes I would be face to face with an enemy and melee them and it just wouldn't work for some reason. Like, my character would do the melee animation, but it wouldn't hit the enemy. Lastly, the graphics. I think it's a good-looking game. I don't think it's the best-looking game out there. I'm actually a little disappointed with the visuals. Okay, not the visuals, but the graphics. I like the visuals as the art style. I like that it's a much more colorful world. I like that you can go into areas that have jungles and, like, a marsh and wetland rather than what you used to have, which was nothing but a shitty desert. So I liked the design. I just didn't necessarily think graphically it was where it should have been. I don't think there was enough detail there to be photorealistic. And they were trying to be a much more realistic look rather than like a fully cartoony look, so it could have looked better. I mean, Bethesda, id, all those groups have done much better visually. It's not like it looked like complete shit, so there's nothing there to really complain about the way it looked. So to wrap this up, I think Rage 2 is a much better game than Rage 1, but it's not something that is like a necessity in your life. I am comfortable recommending it, but I'm more comfortable recommending it if you just have nothing else to play right now. It'll be a good game to fill in that summer drought, and it'll be a better game if it's like $40, $45 when you buy it. Okay, so in the comments below, why don't you tell me what game disappointed you and then had a much better sequel? I mean, I think we could all say Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs. That's pretty easy. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one.